Bible in a Year Live, Chronological Project, Week 23, Day 3, Good News Translation. King Amaziah of Judah. In the second year of the reign of Joash, son of Jehoiada, as king of Israel, Amaziah, son of Joash, became king of Judah at the age of 25, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother was Jehoiadin from Jerusalem. He did what was pleasing to the Lord, but he was not like his ancestor King David. Instead, he did what his father Joash had done. He did not tear down the pagan places of worship, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burned incense there. As soon as Amaziah was firmly in power, he executed the officials who had killed his father, the king. However, he did not kill their children, but followed what the Lord had commanded in the law of Moses. Parents are not to be put to death for crimes committed by their children, and children are not to be put to death for crimes committed by their parents. People are to be put to death only for a crime they themselves have committed. Amaziah killed 10,000 Edomite soldiers in Salt Valley. He captured the city of Selah in battle and called it Joktheel, the name it still has. Then Amaziah sent messengers to King Jehoash of Israel, challenging him to fight. But King Jehoash sent back the following reply. Once a thorn bush on the Lebanon mountain sent a message to a cedar, "Give your daughter in marriage to my son." A wild animal passed by and trampled the bush down. Now, Amaziah, you have defeated the Edomites, and you are filled with pride. Be satisfied with your fame and stay at home. Why stir up trouble that would only bring disaster on you and your people? But Amaziah refused to listen, so King Jehoash marched out with his men and fought against him at Beth Shemesh in Judah. Amaziah's army was defeated, and all his soldiers fled to their homes. Joash took Amaziah prisoner, advanced on Jerusalem, and tore down the city wall from Ephraim Gate to the Corner Gate, a distance of 200 yards. He took all the silver and gold he could find, and all the temple equipment, and all the palace treasures, and carried them back to Samaria. He also took hostages with him. King Amaziah of Judah. Amaziah became king at the age of 25, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother was Jehoiadin from Jerusalem. He did what was pleasing to the Lord, but did it reluctantly. As soon as he was firmly in power, he executed the officials who had murdered his father. He did not, however, execute their children, but followed what the Lord had commanded in the law of Moses. Parents are not to be put to death for crimes committed by their children, and children are not to be put to death for crimes committed by their parents. People are to be put to death only for crimes they themselves have committed. War against Edom. King Amaziah organized all the men of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin into army units, according to the clans they belonged to, and placed officers in command of units of 1,000 and units of 100. They included all men 20 years of age or older, 300,000 in all. They were picked troops, ready for battle, skilled in using spears and shields. In addition, he hired 100,000 soldiers from Israel at a cost of about 4 tons of silver. But a prophet went to the king and said to him, "Don't take these Israelite soldiers with you. The Lord is not with these people from the northern kingdom. You may think that they will make you stronger in battle, but it is God who has the power to give victory or defeat, and he will let your enemies defeat you." Amaziah asked the prophet, "What about all that silver I have already paid for them?" The prophet replied, "The Lord can give you back more than that." So Amaziah sent the hired troops away and told them to go home. At this they went home, bitterly angry with the people of Judah. Amaziah summoned up his courage and led his army to Salt Valley. There they fought and killed 10,000 Edomite soldiers and captured another 10,000. They took the prisoners to the top of the cliff at the city of Selah and threw them off, so that they were killed on the rocks below. Meanwhile, the Israelite soldiers that Amaziah had not allowed to go into battle with him attacked the Judean cities between Samaria and Beth Horon, killed 3,000 men, and captured quantities of loot. When Amaziah returned from defeating the Edomites, he brought their idols back with him, set them up, worshipped them, and burned incense to them. This made the Lord angry, so he sent a prophet to Amaziah. The prophet demanded, "Why have you worshipped foreign gods that could not even save their own people from your power?" "Since when," Amaziah interrupted, "have we made you an advisor to the king? Stop talking, or I'll have you killed." The prophet stopped, but not before saying, "Now I know that God has decided to destroy you, because you have done all this and have ignored my advice." War against Israel. King Amaziah of Judah and his advisors plotted against Israel. He then sent a message to King Joash of Israel, who was the son of Jehoahaz and grandson of Jehu, challenging him to fight. Jehoash sent this answer to Amaziah. Once a thorn bush in the Lebanon mountains sent a message to a cedar, "Give your daughter in marriage to my son." A wild animal passed by and trampled the bush down. "No, Amaziah, you boast that you have defeated the Edomites, but I advise you to stay at home. Why stir up trouble that will only bring disaster on you and your people?" But Amaziah refused to listen. It was God's will for Amaziah to be defeated because he had worshipped the Edomite idols. So King Joash of Israel went into battle against King Amaziah of Judah. They met at Beth Shemesh in Judah. The Judean army was defeated, and the soldiers fled to their homes. Jehoash captured Amaziah and took him to Jerusalem. There he tore down the city wall of Ephraim Gate to the corner gate, a distance of 200 yards. He took back to Samaria as loot all the gold and silver in the temple equipment guarded by the descendants of Obed-Edom, and the palace treasures. He also took hostages with him. Everything else that Joash did, including his bravery in the war against King Amaziah of Judah, is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. Joash died and was buried in the royal tombs in Samaria, and his son, Jeroboam II, succeeded him as king. Everything else that Joash did, including his bravery in the war against King Amaziah of Judah, is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. Joash died and was buried in the royal tombs in Samaria, and his son, Jeroboam II, succeeded him as king. Jeroboam II of Israel. In the 15th year of the reign of Amaziah, son of Joash, as king of Judah, Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, became king of Israel, and he ruled in Samaria for 41 years. He sinned against the Lord, following the wicked example of his predecessor, King Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who led Israel into sin. He reconquered all the territory that had belonged to Israel from Hamath Pass in the north to the Dead Sea in the south. It was what the Lord, the God of Israel, had promised through his servant, the prophet Jonah, son of Amittai, from Gath Hepher. The Lord saw the terrible suffering of the Israelites. There was no one at all to help them. But it was not the Lord's purpose to destroy Israel completely and forever. So he rescued them through King Jeroboam II. King Amaziah of Judah outlived King Joash of Israel by 15 years. All the other things that Amaziah did from the beginning to the end of his reign are recorded in the history of the kings of Judah and Israel. Ever since the time when he rebelled against the Lord, there had been a plot against him in Jerusalem. Finally, he fled to the city of Lachish, but his enemies followed him there and killed him. His body was carried to Jerusalem on a horse, and he was buried in the royal tombs in David's city. The death of King Amaziah of Judah. King Amaziah of Judah lived 15 years after the death of King Joash of Israel. Everything else that Amaziah did is recorded in the history of the kings of Judah. There was a plot in Jerusalem to assassinate Amaziah, so he fled to the city of Lachish, but his enemies followed him there and killed him. His body was carried back to Jerusalem on a horse and was buried in the royal tombs in David's city. The people of Judah then crowned his 16-year-old son Uzziah as king. Uzziah reconquered and rebuilt Elath after his father's death. King Uzziah of Judah. In the 27th year of the reign of King Jeroboam II of Israel, Uzziah, son of Amaziah, became king of Judah at the age of 16, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 52 years. His mother was Jecholiah from Jerusalem. Following the example of his father, he did what was pleasing to the Lord. But the pagan places of worship were not destroyed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burnt incense there. The Lord struck Uzziah with a dreaded skin disease that stayed with him the rest of his life. He lived in a separate house, relieved of all duties, while his son Jotham governed the country. King Uzziah of Judah. All the people of Judah chose Amaziah's 16-year-old son Uzziah to succeed his father as king. It was after the death of Amaziah that Uzziah recaptured Elath and rebuilt the city. Uzziah became king at the age of 16, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 52 years. His mother was Jecholah from Jerusalem. Following the example of his father, he did what was pleasing to the Lord. As long as Zechariah, his religious advisor, was living, he served the Lord faithfully, and God blessed him. Uzziah went to war against the Philistines. He tore down the walls of the cities of Gath, Jamniah, and Ashdod, and built fortified cities near Ashdod and in the rest of Philistia. God helped him defeat the Philistines, the Arabs living at Gurbaal, and the Meunites. The Ammonites paid tribute to Uzziah, and he became so powerful that his fame spread even to Egypt. Uzziah strengthened the fortifications of Jerusalem by building towers at the corner gates, at the valley gates, and where the wall turned. He also built fortified towers in the open country and dug many cisterns, because he had large herds of livestock in the western foothills and plains. Because he loved farming, he encouraged the people to plant vineyards in the hill country and to farm the fertile land. He had a large army ready for battle. Its records were kept by his secretaries BIAYL and Maaseiah, under the supervision of Hananiah, a member of the king's staff. The army was commanded by 2,600 officers. Under them were 307,500 soldiers able to fight effectively for the king against his enemies. Uzziah supplied the army with shields, spears, helmets, coats of arms, bows and arrows, and stones for slinging. In Jerusalem, his inventors made equipment for shooting arrows and for throwing large stones from the towers and corners of the city wall. His fame spread everywhere, and he became very powerful because of the help he received from God. Uzziah is punished for his pride. But when King Uzziah became strong, he grew arrogant, and that led to his downfall. He defied the Lord, his God, by going into the temple to burn incense on the altar of incense. Azariah, the priest, accompanied by 80 strong and courageous priests, followed the king to resist him. They said, "Uzziah, you have no right to burn incense to the Lord. Only the priests who are descended from Aaron have been consecrated to do this. Leave this holy place. You have offended the Lord God, and you no longer have his blessing." Uzziah was standing there in the temple beside the incense altar and was holding an incense burner. He became angry with the priest, and immediately a dreaded skin disease broke out on his forehead. Azariah and the other priests stared at the king's forehead in horror and then forced him to leave the temple. He hurried to get out because the Lord had punished him. For the rest of his life, King Uzziah was ritually unclean because of his disease. Unable to enter the temple again, he lived in his own house, relieved of all duties, while his son Jotham governed the country. Jonah disobeyed the Lord. One day the Lord spoke to Jonah, son of Amittai. He said, "Go to Nineveh, that great city, and speak out against it. I am aware of how wicked its people are." Jonah, however, set out in the opposite direction in order to get away from the Lord. He went to Joppa, where he found a ship about to go to Spain. He paid his fare and went aboard with the crew to sail to Spain, where he would be away from the Lord. But the Lord sent a strong wind on the sea, and the storm was so violent that the ship was in danger of breaking up. The sailors were terrified and cried out for help, each one to his own God. Then, in order to lessen the danger, they threw the cargo overboard. Meanwhile, Jonah had gone below and was lying in the ship's hold, sound asleep. The captain found him there and said to him, "What are you doing asleep? Get up and pray to your God for help. Maybe he will feel sorry for us and spare our lives." The sailors said to each other, "Let's draw lots and find out who is to blame for getting us into this danger." They did so, and Jonah's name was drawn. So they said to him, "Now, then, tell us, who is to blame for this? What are you doing here? What country do you come from? What is your nationality?" "I am a Hebrew," Jonah answered. "I worship the Lord, the God of heavens, who made land and sea." Jonah went on to tell them that he was running away from the Lord. The sailors were terrified and said to him, "That was an awful thing to do." The storm was getting worse all the time, so the sailors asked him, "What should we do to you to stop the storm?" Jonah answered, "Throw me into the sea, and it will calm down. I know it is my fault that you are caught in this violent storm." Instead, the sailors tried to get the ship to shore, rowing with all their might. But the storm was becoming worse and worse, and they got nowhere. So they cried out to the Lord, "O Lord, we pray, don't punish us with death for taking this man's life. You, O Lord, are responsible for all this. It is your doing." Then they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea, and it calmed down at once. This made the sailors so afraid of the Lord that they offered a sacrifice and promised to serve him. At the Lord's command, a large fish swallowed Jonah, and he was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah's prayer. From deep inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God. "In my distress, O Lord, I called to you, and you answered me. From deep in the world of the dead, I cried for your help. I cried for help, and you heard me. You threw me down into the depths, to the very bottom of the sea, where the waters were all around me, and all your mighty waves rolled over me. I thought I had been banished from your presence, and would never see your holy temple again. The water came over me and choked me. The sea covered me completely, and seaweed wrapped around my head. I went down to the very roots of the mountains, into the land where gates lock shut forever. But you, O Lord my God, brought me back from the depths alive. When I felt my life slipping away, then, O Lord, I prayed to you, and in your holy temple you heard me. Those who worship worthless idols have abandoned their loyalty to you, but I will sing praises to you. I will offer you a sacrifice and do what I have promised. Salvation comes from the Lord." Then the Lord ordered the fish to spit Jonah up on the beach, and it did. Jonah obeys the Lord. Once again, the Lord spoke to Jonah. He said, "Go to Nineveh, the great city, and proclaim to the people the message I have given you." So Jonah obeyed the Lord and went to Nineveh, a city so large that it took 3 days to walk through it. Jonah started through the city, and after walking a whole day, he proclaimed, "In 40 days Nineveh will be destroyed." The people of Nineveh believed God's message, so they answered that everyone should fast, and all the people, from the greatest to the least, must put on sackcloth to show that they had repented. When the king of Nineveh heard about it, he got up from his throne, took off his robe, put on sackcloth, and sat down in ashes. He sent out a proclamation to the people of Nineveh. "This is an order from the king and his officials. No one is to eat anything. All persons, cattle, and sheep are forbidden to eat or drink. All persons and animals must wear sackcloth. Everyone must pray earnestly to God and must give up their wicked behavior and their evil actions. Perhaps God will change his mind. Perhaps he will stop being angry, and we will not die." God saw what they did. He saw that they had given up their wicked behavior, so he changed his mind and did not punish them as he had said he would. Jonah's anger and God's mercy. Jonah was very unhappy about this and became angry. So he prayed, "Lord, didn't I say before I left home that this is just what you would do? That's why I did my best to run away to Spain. I knew that you are a loving and merciful God, always patient, always kind, and always ready to change your mind and not punish. Now then, Lord, let me die. I am better off dead than alive." The Lord answered, "What right do you have to be angry?" Jonah went out east of the city and sat down. He made a shelter for himself and sat in its shade, waiting to see what would happen to Nineveh. Then the Lord God made a plant grow up over Jonah to give him some shade so that he would be more comfortable. Jonah was extremely pleased with the plant, but at dawn the next day, at God's command, a worm attacked the plant and it died. After the sun had risen, God sent a hot east wind, and Jonah was about to faint from the heat of the sun beating down on his head. So he wished he were dead. "I am better off dead than alive," he said. But God said to him, "What right do you have to be angry about the plant?" Jonah replied, "I have every right to be angry, angry enough to die." The Lord said to Jonah, "This plant grew up in one night and disappeared the next. You didn't do anything for it, and you didn't make it grow, yet you feel sorry for it. How much more then should I have pity on Nineveh, that great city? After all, It has more than 120,000 innocent children in it, as well as many animals.